Hey everybody, welcome to Morris Brosette Nutrition. Today we're going to be making a vegan tarragon salad. You may have seen a chicken tarragon salad in the grocery stores. If you guys have a Central Market or a Whole Foods, it's usually a really great little snack or a great dish that they like to prepare. It's usually made with baked pulled chicken and grapes and walnuts and other great ingredients. So we're going to try to make this vegan today. This is my first attempt at this, and I thought, what better way to try to make this successful than to share it with you guys. So here we go. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is chop up our herbs. And the herb we're going to use for today primarily is tarragon. That's what it looks like. Tarragon is actually, it's French in origin, and it has, if you eat it by itself, if you eat the herb by itself, it tastes kind of like licorice. Now, don't get scared if you don't like licorice. I personally don't like the taste of licorice at all. It's just something my palate doesn't really enjoy. But this actually really tastes good, and I like it. And it's not like if you guys eat like a candied licorice or something like that. It doesn't taste anything like that. It's actually really, really good. So all I did was take, and I've already got some pulled off for you. You just take the stem and basically rake down it with your fingers, and if you get some of the stems in this, it's fine. It's not going to alter the taste. It's okay to eat. So all I do is just bunch it up, and we're going to chop it up real fine here. Now, one thing to know is that you always want to try to use, especially with tarragon or any herb, you always want to try to use fresh herbs. You can use dried herbs. The problem with dried, and specifically with tarragon, is that it loses its aroma and it loses its flavor. Plus, you don't know how long they've been sitting on the shelves. So it's always best to get fresh herbs. And actually, I think it's usually a little bit less expensive too. So we're going to use about 2 tablespoons with this. And I'm going to print this, or I'm going to post this recipe with all the ingredients on morrisbrosettenutrition.com. So be sure to run over there and check it out. But we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of tarragon. Next, we're going to use some celery, and we're going to chop up about a cup of celery. And what I've done, and again, a lot of times at your local markets or your grocery stores, they'll have vegetables and fruits already pretty much chopped up and ready to go for you. I like to chop these up just a little bit more, so I'm not getting a big bite of celery every time I bite into my tarragon salad. So just spin it a little bit and chop it up. Get a little bit finer. We're going to go with about a cup of this as well. Give it a good chop. And you don't have to chop it up. This really depends on you. If you love celery, if you like the taste of it, you can just leave it as is. Just chop it up and dice it really to whatever you like. We're going to add that right in there. The great thing about this, guys, you really don't have to cook. There is no preparation to it other than chopping up fresh vegetables and herbs and pop them in a bowl and mix them up. Go one more here. I don't think we have quite a cup. Another thing I like to teach my clients when I'm teaching cooking classes, or when I'm teaching my nutrition clients how to start cooking, is don't get hung up in the exact amount of the ingredients. If I give you a recipe and it calls for 1 cup of something, put a cup in. If you like that ingredient, it's like I said, if you like celery and you really want some more celery in your dish, then put some more in there. It really depends on you and what your palate is again. Now, here's something I'm going to add different to it. I've got a couple of cool little ingredients I'm going to add that are a little bit different than your normal chicken tarragon salad, aside from the chicken. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of kale. Now, for those of you who do not know what kale is a leafy green. It's very, very nutritious. It's very nutrient dense. You can actually get all your daily recommended allowance of protein through kale if you ate enough. Now, you'd have to eat a lot of it, but actually this vegetable does have a lot of protein in it. It has a lot of iron, has a lot of calcium, magnesium, all important nutrients. And all I did, guys, there's a couple of different varieties of kale. I like to use the dinosaur kale. It's a longer stem leaf. You can see that long rib running through it. It's just a lot easier to cut and cut out. So all I do is just run the knife right down the side of it, alongside. And there, it's done. Do one more here. And again, this is the first time I've tried to use this ingredient. I've never used this with kale before, so we'll see how it goes. And all I do from there is, see how it's long here? The quickest way to chop this stuff up is I fold it over itself once, and I fold it over itself again, and then put it down on the chopping block, and then cut. There you go. Kale's very high in vitamin K. Vitamin K is really important for bone density growth. So if you are concerned with osteoporosis, if you have family members that have bone fractures or histories of bone fractures, it's really, really important nutrient. It's also important nutrient or vitamin to help prevent against loss of nutrients of the brain. So a lot of times it's been shown to help with Alzheimer's prevention. A lot of these things we run into as far as illnesses and diseases, a lot of times it stems from malnutrition. So what I'm going to do with kale, with this one, because I don't want this to be a predominantly kale dish, I just want to throw some in there. So I'm going to chop it up real fine. There we go. Okay. Perfect. And that says probably about a cup. There we go. All right. Moving on. Next, we're going to add our red grapes. This is one of the. This kind of gives the the tarragon salad a little bit of sweet kick to it. I've already chopped or sliced the grapes in half, but since this is, I'm gonna use a cannelli bean, a great white. It's called a northern bean or cannelli bean. I'm going to use that instead of chicken, so I don't want to put too many carbohydrates in here. So all I'm doing is taking the grapes, slicing them in half, and I'm going to use about a cup. I already have some done there. I'm going to add that in. And there we go. So next we're going to put in our nuts for the day. And usually, again, tarragon salad calls for roasted walnuts, and all you do if you roast walnuts, it's really easy. The best way to do it, the most cost-effective way to do this is buy them in the bulk section if you can, and then all you do is chop them up kind of fine, put them in the oven for about 10 minutes at 350 degrees, and it roasts them. And what it does, it really pulls out the flavor of the walnut, really makes it tasty, and really adds to the dish. So we're going to throw about a half cup of walnuts into the mix, and then aside from walnuts, we're going to use pumpkin seeds. Now, here's the deal with pumpkin seeds. They're really, really good for you. They're high in protein, they're high in magnesium, they're high in iron. A lot of great nutrients in pumpkin seeds. And again, since we're not using chicken, we're not using an animal-based protein, to get the biggest bang for our buck and to increase the protein content of our meal, we're going to add some nuts and some other nutrients like the kale to just increase the amount of protein that we're getting in the meal. Next thing I'm going to do is add about 2 tablespoons of a chopped shallot. Right? And shallot's basically a purple onion, a small purple onion. Don't worry, you're not going to run around smelling like onions. It really absorbs into the other ingredients. What I would suggest with you, this is one that I would suggest you chop up pretty fine, because you don't want to get a big bite of raw onion unless you like that. And that's fine too. So let's chop this up real good. And usually the recipe calls for about 2 tablespoons of this. Okay, I like a little bit more. I'm making a little bit more, so I'm gonna add some more to it. But again, guys, here's the cool thing: just make sure you always start small. Right? What that means is if it calls for 2 tablespoons of an ingredient like purple onion, and you're kind of like, I'm not sure if I like purple onion or not, put a tablespoon in. Don't put the full 2 tablespoons in. Then if you like it, you can add a little bit more. It's really up to you. That's the cool thing about cooking foods like this, is that it's really up to you and what you like and what you like for your taste. Okay, so we've got those ingredients in. Next thing we're going to do is add our vinegar. So what we're going to use here today is an apple cider vinegar. We're going to throw in 3 tablespoons of this. Apple cider vinegar is, I'm sure most of you know, a very good superfood and health tonic. We're putting 3 tablespoons of this in here. Apple cider vinegar helps with diabetes, helps control blood sugar. There have been studies that show that apple cider vinegar helps kill certain cancer cells. So it's something that's very, very good, and I'll try to use it in everything I prepare. If I prepare a salad, if anything calls for some sort of dressing or any sort of vinegar, I usually like to use an apple cider vinegar. Okay. Next, we're going to use almost a half cup of mayonnaise. I'll use a little bit less. Again, that just depends on you and what you. If you like mayonnaise, you can throw a little bit more in there. Now, what I used is not a regular mayonnaise. I've used a mayonnaise that's made from flaxseed oil. So you want to try to get a good mayonnaise from flaxseed oil or olive oil. Stay away from the canola oil if at all possible. The other ingredient I'm using is about a 1/4 cup of honey mustard. And again, this is just an organic honey mustard. I'm going to put that in there. Now, here's the meat of our dish. Instead of using chicken, I'm using cannelli beans. All right? Now, I put a typical recipe of Tarragon salad, chicken salad, calls for about, I think, 2 to 3 cups of chicken. So instead, I put 3 cans of these cannelli beans. And that's how, if you don't know or can't understand what I'm saying, it's cannelli beans. These guys are a great source of protein, great source of fiber, great source of other nutrients. Magnesium, calcium, iron, all those things that you guys need to have again. Okay? And before I stir that up, we're going to reach up here and add just a little bit of salt, because now with the salt, again guys, be very cautious with this. Okay? I'm putting in right now about a teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm going to put just a touch of salt right now of an organic, of a sea salt. Okay? Because the vinegar is kind of salty. The mustard, honey mustard, is kind of salty. So you don't want to over salt the dish. And you're just going to give it a big stir here. Mix everything up. Let it all kind of blend together for a minute and give it a taste. So another thing that's important to know is I use the cannelli beans. I use the canned cannelli bean, and that's fine for you to use. Try to get the kind that have no salt added on the label, because again, we don't want our sodium levels to go super high through the roof in these dishes. But what I did is I put them in a strainer and just rinse them off really, really well. Rinse it off till you see water running clear out of the bottom of the bowl. Okay. The last thing I wanted to tell you about before we get into the dish and give it a little taste test here is with the vegetables. Make sure with the kale, or if you're cooking with any vegetable for that matter, always make sure you wash it really well before you chop it, cook it, serve it. Even if you're making a salad, you want to make sure that you rinse it really well. I use this veggie wash I get from my local market here. They usually have these at most any grocery store. You always want to make sure you wash your vegetables really, really well. Even if you're using organic ingredients, you still want to wash them really well, because you don't know who picked those vegetables up at the grocery store. They have fumes on them from travel, from transport. So always make sure you wash your vegetables and fruits really, really, really well. I cannot emphasize that enough. All right. Now, let's find a fork. Give this a try. See what we have here. Man, that's good. Now, again, taste it. See what you think. See what flavors you taste. I'll probably add a little bit more salt to this, just because I'm getting into a little bit more bulk of my training. I sweat a lot, so I could use a little bit more. And also, when you first finish it, let it sit for a little bit. Put it in the refrigerator, let it chill for about 15 to 20 minutes. The longer you let it sit, the more these ingredients, all those fresh, the aroma and the taste of the herbs and the onions and everything will blend together, and it kind of infuses into each other. So, all right, make sure you check this recipe out on MorrisBrossettNutrition.com, and I think we've had a great success here. All right, guys.